like I think people will remember themselves in 5 years. People are going to look back and saying, what did I do during COVID-19? Did I bunker up, buy all the toilet paper and all the pasta in the store, sit at home and just watch Netflix? And I actually don't think that anything would stop. And I think that part of some things, I think we can all wish that they stopped. But I just don't think that is how humanity works. No company can survive without any revenue. So like this firm here, it's like we're dead.
The reason of why I called you and I sent you that I would really like to talk to you is because we used to, the startup scene in Malmo or Sweden or even like Europe and globally, when we needed an advice in the normal way, we would like call you for advices. And I think now there is like a very need from anyone watching this video from the startup community to get some tips. Everything is a chaos now. Investors are pulling out. You can't test the same testing of your product like before. No. Even if you are like a startup who have been running for 3 years, or a startup gonna start tomorrow, or a startup have already 1 year getting investment, there is so much chaos and challenge. Do you remember your 5 testing methods? So what are they now in this? How can startups survive in this chaos? And like, what are your thoughts?
There's certain kind of companies that if you're in the company stage where you have cash in the bank, you have raised a round, and your company has nothing to do with COVID-19 whatsoever, and if you are in the research product building phase of your company, then I would actually just try to act as normal. I would definitely cut necessary costs on marketing and sales if I can. I would reduce my ad spend and all those kind of things. And I would just try to kind of sit in my ivory tower or basement and just, work. And just try not to refresh the browser and read all the COVID-19 news, but use this as the world is at pause and there's no conferences, there's no events. I'll just have to, it's a great occasion for us to kind of work on COVID-19. So what I've actually advised a lot of companies to do is to just do a very simple matrix, a very simple grid, where you say like on one end, you say how long is COVID going to last, more or less? Like it's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months. So, and then up here, our revenue numbers and staffing numbers, there's cost and revenues, and then you look at the grid and then you red mark everything which is impossible. So then you can very quickly see it's like, okay, so you have this spectrum down here, which COVID-19 lasts for 18 months, then probably everything is pretty red. Like no company can survive without any revenue. So like this firm here, it's like we're dead. But then you look at it, it's like, what if we kind of 18 months, but then we let go of all sales and marketing, only keep product. Shit, this is crazy, right? We survive and we could rehire the staff in 18 months. Okay, so there's one green box down there. And then you just go through all of these and look at everything which is green. And then of course the thing is, all of these are depending on you acting now, right? So it's not that you can say, okay, on the 18th scenario, let's see if it's 18. You have to act now. So then at the end of the day, your job as a CEO or whatever board investor, whoever you are in this, is to just discuss which scenario we want, like what risk can we take, and just deciding on this is the box we'll have to take. Like we'll just have to say that we think COVID-19 is going to be 6 months, and we think that we will get 70% of all the invoices paid, and we think that therefore we will need to let go of 10% of staff. Okay, so that's what we'll have to do. And if COVID-19 is worse, we'll move one box to the left here.
And have the priority in orders.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think at the end of the day, like because I'm complaining about companies not being or governments not being transparent about how they're thinking, I think that we as companies, we have to do the same thing. We just have to create scenarios and say, these are the different scenarios. This is what we can do.
Which is like, just remind, like I was having this discussion at Ming with Nino. It's like the startups just should a little bit realize that it's the same chaos we used to be in for 4 years. But now we just actually have a real enemy somehow. So we know actually what we are fighting. Because when you are a startup, if you have money or you don't have money, you always live in this chaos where you have to have different scenarios. But now just build the scenarios and put like the end is to fight COVID-19 crisis.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the crazy part. If you want to see this in a crazy light, I think that the worst situation you can be in one sense, is not being a startup. I mean, the bad thing about being a startup is, of course, that you probably don't have a lot of economical buffer. the crazy thing if you're a startup is that you're probably pretty used to not having a good economical buffer.
Yeah.
And you're probably pretty good at figuring out how to stay alive anyway. And I think the complicated thing is like, I would much more fear if the people who work at big companies at works where they will not be rehired, and there's a very big risk they will be fired, and these people are living above their expenses. So living with high mortgages and high loans, and I mean they have an expensive car and everything. And the only sort of silver lining for them is that they might get money back from their booked vacation this summer. So that's the buffer they have. And I think because if they lose their job, I mean, what the bank can't just tell them that they can keep their house. So I mean, that's the scary part, is that everybody who's been living on the edge economically, and I mean, I'm not talking about living on the edge as in real poverty, but just people who have been living close to kind of economically cash flow positive. They're at really big risk, of course, of something happening. And for them, it's a huge decision deciding to kind of economically downgrade their life and selling their apartments and doing any kind of those movements. So I think if you're a startup, you
cars and start to work from the startup perspective as freelancing and going and like having their economy in order, actually.
Exactly. So I think that one thing I would think about from, I think, the 08 trying to look at where the history rhymes here is, I mean, trying to think of how you can create an individual and company and societal economical resilience. Is there anything you can do with your own economy where you can cut costs? And I think that is the thing I would really think about. Like, just go through, okay, so can I, cancel my whatever Netflix account is maybe not the one you want to cancel right now, but I would just try to think of what you can do and what cost can you cut so that you will be able to act. Because I think that what you don't want is, like, you don't want to be in a situation where you will have to act irrationally and do something irreparable. I mean, think about being forced to sell your apartment for a fourth of what you bought it for, and then you don't really know where to move, and it's going to be very complicated. That is, like, you just have to realize that those things can happen. And I think that, I mean, luck favors the prepared. I think just trying to think about scenarios, it is definitely a complicated thing to decide. But I think, one, if you're the kind of company that essentially can just decide to roll on as usual, I think you should definitely reduce your costs, because you don't know how long it's going to take. If you're a company that I think is on the other spectrum, if you're on the company which is literally fundraising right now and you have 3 months left in the bank, I think you just have to understand that that will not happen. I think the companies that are the most amazing companies with the most amazing metrics that are already in conversations with a couple of investors, you might close the round. But going out fresh without anything right now and without kind of a round, I think it's not going to happen. I think it is, and for the advice for that category, it's very tricky, because what are you going to do? I mean, can you reduce your costs so that you can survive? Yes, you could probably, right? Everybody can cut their salary. You can sort of just ask your landlord for not paying the rent. You can just do as much as you can. The question is, for how long? For 3 months, for 6 months, for 9 months? You don't know.
No.
And I think that there are different forecasts all the time. And I think from the politicians layer, a lot of the politicians are saying, oh, this is going to be over in a month. And I think that, I don't think it's going to be over in a month. I genuinely don't think so.
Beginning of when it's come to what's going to happen economically, I think.
Yeah. And I think that even if it's going to be over, like, let's say in 3 months, the problem is, as you said, I think that the economy will be very shook up.
Yeah.
So it depends really what kind of customers you have as well. I think if a certain kind of customer, I think it works out. I think that then you could do business. So I think that I think is not, if you're that category, I think it's very complicated. As well, I would say if you're the other category, I think where it's very complicated, if you're the category which is what I would say the pre-COVID-19 world, which I really hope that post-COVID-19 will change. So if you're in the travel sector, tourism sector, unnecessary consumption sector, like if you're a startup that are working with things that COVID-19 made impossible, for example, with flights, I think that I really dearly hope that 2021 will be the year when we're going to have less flights. I mean, we're going to have less pollution that we're going to think about. And I think that it would be so absurd to use the fact that we haven't seen now 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on where in the world, without travel, without pollution. So I really hope that all the startups that are working with these kind of sectors, that they actually rethink. It's like, do we actually want to be kind of a fly more startup? Do we actually want to be a buy unnecessary goods and create more plastic startups? I think that if you're those two kind of startups, I would really sort of pause and think, okay, what do I do? Could kind of play a role in COVID-19 now without destroying your business or without sort of making it too strange of a thing. I would really go full on right now. And I think that if you're in telemedicine, if you're in takeaway foods, if you're in restaurant back offices, like if you're in so many things, or like there's an ed tech startup that now flipped and made a nurse retraining from flight stewardess to nurses. And I think you can view that as different lights. You can definitely see it in kind of COVID-19 washing, and then people are saying, "Ooh, like we're this amazing company." But I honestly think that, like, I think people will remember themselves in 5 years. People are going to look back and saying, "What did I do during COVID-19? Did I bunker up, buy all the toilet paper and all the pasta in the store, sit at home and just watch Netflix?" Or, exactly. Or they just say like, "Well, we tried really hard. We actually shipped a couple of things. We were able to do this and that. That was part of this big online community." And I think that the companies where their business model is in line with this, I think for them, they will of course also be able to pay their salaries and raise their rounds and everything, because I think that they're going to be business as usual, but then within the new climate, within like with COVID-19. So I think that I think it's important. I've thought about it a lot, and I think that it's so easy to look at those companies and say, yeah, of course, now you're a COVID-19 caring company. But at the same time, I think that when there was like in the Second World War, I mean, if you're a factory making sewing machines, you converted quickly into making guns. And I think that that's what we're seeing today. We're seeing like auto manufacturers making masks with 3D printers and making visors. I think that so many people are just stepping up and saying, we can do this, we can do this. And I think that is, if I would look at one glimpse of hope for community, I would say that there's so many things shattering, as we talked about previously.
Yeah.
But I think that the thing I actually see is that I think there's so many people that are standing up and doing really interesting things and really important things. So many heroes I've met are doing things like, I'm a coder, I work part-time doing something, and now I'm talking to many hospitals and just trying to make an overview system of hospital beds. So working in the evenings, working the days, and just making a way so that hospital staff can see which hospital beds are taken and not, so that they don't have to walk around, so that they don't have to spread disease. They just have an iPad app they can click and see, this one is taken, this one is taken. If you're a good developer, that's 2 days of work. And I think that
probably you would be that developer who was like doing the same thing, but for the air flight companies or for
exactly. Yeah,
and
exactly.
Here is like really nice question. If we are an airline app and you were like so in tourism, and now we see opportunity to change and we can actually tweak our whole app and go to COVID-19. And then you have actually saw us like maybe 1 year or 2 years ago, we tried to raise money. When you see this kind of companies are changing, will you invest in them? Will you actually, even if you know that they have only done it because of that switch and like, maybe
absolutely.
The heart and 75% just to make profit. What is your take about it? Because some people be a little bit shy.
No, I think that there's one. I mean, I think it's always tricky to get investors to invest. Base case. I think it's even trickier to get investors to invest when we're in a very strange market, when nobody's liquid. But I think startups are organizations that are good at adapting to change. And I think that COVID-19 is, of course, a big external event. And I think that if you're a startup who is in the flight booking business now, and you're not doing anything, if I would look at that company now as an investor, I would look at them and say, so why are you not doing anything? They would say, we're just waiting it out. I think that, sure, you could have your reasons, right? But I think at the same time, this is your chance to prove that you are working with opportunities. And it's so easy to see this as profiteering, right? You could see, you're profiteering upon COVID-19. There are definitely some companies that are profiteering on COVID-19, but I would say they're very, very rare. And those are the companies that create scam medicines, or what's it called? Kind of online pastors of the US who are kind of curing people of COVID-19. That's a pure scam. But I think if you're the airline booking plan company now, who quickly creates a product for creating hospital beds, and you're starting selling that product, I can't see in any shape or form that you're kind of exploiting the moment. I think that you're using the opportunity. And as an investor, I would definitely see it as a positive. I would say, interesting, you were able to use that moment very well. And you don't want to charge for your product right now, so your revenue is going to be low. I understand that. Like, I don't think you should. So keep that low, but let's use that momentum. So I'm in companies, for example, where in telemedicine companies or telehealth companies, who have now done a campaign where if you're like all hospitals or caretakers can use it for free during COVID-19. I think they should do is like I think they can use it for free, but I don't think they can say that the caretakers can use it for free during all of COVID-19, because that's a definition question. What is all of COVID-19? Is it till the virus is eradicated and we have a vaccine on the planet, or is it that this organization believes that in your country it's not big of a problem anymore, or whatever is it? And I think the only way to say it is that we'll make it free for whatever, 3 months, 2 months, something, and then we might renew it depending on the situation on COVID-19 and how it looks. And I think that's I think is the difference between running a company and running a non-profit. Like if you're running a company, you're like, at the end of the day, we kind of need a revenue for this, and we kind of need to be able to pay our salaries, and we're using this both because we think that we want to give it to the world, but also because, of course, it's going to propel our company to a position where we want it to be. And I think that I'm a very big believer in kind of purpose-driven capitalism. I believe that capitalism can be used. It's an amazing machine that we built that is like, it's like a monster that adapts and tries to figure out stuff. And I think the good thing about this monster is that if you target it on doing something that benefits people, it will adapt to that and try to optimize on that. But if you don't tell it to do something good, it will adapt for shareholder value and just do something. So I think we should use the machine. Yeah, I think we should use the machine we have and just make sure that we're not being stupid about so that it's not. We had pre-COVID-19. I mean, there's a majority of companies that are exploiting the planet and doing really horrible stuff, and nobody's pointing a finger at them. Well, some people are pointing a finger at them, but the thing is, now during COVID-19, I think if you're the company that tries to help out, please do.
Welcome.
Yeah, exactly.
We are running out of time, and I'm so happy with this conversation. It's so interesting. I could like talk to you until 3, but I don't know, you don't have any time. No. But I got a couple of questions from friends of us, and one of them is from Nino, and he really wants to know is what are the things we will not have anymore after COVID-19, like.
Yeah,
but it's in more concrete things is like they will like we had normal things that people think that it will be events, conferences, whatever, gathering in groups or like having social network. That I really hope that events and works will not disappear. But if that there's stuff that will never come back?
I would say on the actual really terminating, like, things will never come back. I don't think I don't think there's anything that's gonna, I don't believe in absolutism in almost any shape, way, or form. I don't think that people after this are gonna say no more flights or no more connecting each other to other people, or nations are gonna say we have to prepare with good supplies, or we have to create a more resilient economy or anything. I think that what the sort of interconnectedness of humanity, democracy, and capitalism and other things are created is that they've essentially created really sort of adaptive and structured systems that are good at changing. But when a system adapts and change, it very rarely just cuts something off, because that's not really how it behaves, right? I think if we see humanity, capitalism, democracy as a tree or a bush very rarely decides to just lose half of it, right? But then that half of it just has smaller leaves. Because it's not that sunny there. So I think what will happen is that we're going to have patches of our tree of life and humanity that are going to have fewer leaves, and some branches that are not going to grow as strong in the future, and some branches that are going to start growing a lot because there's more sun there.
Yeah,
exactly. So for example, I think that work from home, I think remote working, I think that's going to explode. I think telemedicine is going to explode. I think most people have now seen it works, and I think it's going to increase to an extent. I think many companies that did not have remote work before or work from home policies, I think post this, they will all have work from home policies. I think that it's going to be the bananas. I think that people are going to upgrade their internet providers. I think that countries that have low broadband are going to extend their broadband connections. I think many of those things. I think supply chains, I think people are going to think about more things about how to get their goods from one point to another, more redundancies. I think things like that. But I think that to answer the question, I actually don't think that anything will stop. And I think that part of some things, I think we can all wish that they stopped, but I just don't think that is how humanity works or the system works. I do think that it's going to be, I really do hope that when you've seen something, it's going to be very hard to unsee it. So when you've seen an unpolluted day in Delhi, I think it's going to be very, very hard to just say, oh, let's start again. I think it will start again. I think that they will just click the button and every system will start and it's going to small. But I think there are going to be a lot of people in Delhi who remembered a couple of weeks or a couple of months where they were like, the weather was clean, my asthma was fine, I felt much healthier. Maybe I should move out of Delhi, or maybe I should really try to work on this. And I think that I think I have big hopes on, actually.
That's lead me to the second question that I got from
Yeah.
Martin is, do you think that do you believe in the startup community that actually could solve this problem, to start to think about like, how can we let like the government or our country not to press the button again and like come back to the same things, maybe try to find more solutions? Or do you think the startup world can solve the world future problem after COVID-19?
No, I mean, yes and no. I think no, as in I don't think any problem is a binary problem where it's going to be solved, that it's going to click now, we can click the button. But I do think that what I think is amazing is that I think that what's going to change now is that if you were like, let's say you're a telemedicine company, or you were a company that worked for like using local suppliers or something. I think now is like, you now had your amazing period, right? And there are two things that really changed. I think one thing has changed, of course. You got a lot of new customers and you got the attention needed. But I think one thing that we don't really think about that much, which is way more important, is culture. I think I always try to remind people that in 1850, if you ask people in 1850, do you think women should vote? Oh, there was no part of the planet, almost no part of the planet, or not a single individual that said yes, women should vote. Like, people would say like, no, I don't think women. And if you ask women, they said, I don't want to vote, and I don't think women should vote. If you went to 1950, so 100 years slap. I mean, most part of the world, people say, I think women should vote. And most individuals, especially women, thought that they would vote, should vote. And of course, I'm excited right now doing 100 years just to make sure that nobody can like hit me here on some number. But it's actually, if you try to decrease it, if you look at culture by culture, country by country, you would see that the gap wasn't very big.
No.
And I really think that what happened when people figured out that you don't have to travel, or you can buy from local farmers, or supporting, for example, your local restaurant ecosystem, that has a value beyond just like your favorite Eggs Benedict. I think you're going to be like, I'm not going to try to support my local restaurant because I want them to survive the next pandemic. I want to support my local restaurant because they're really valuable to me. Yeah. I was really sad when I thought they were going to die. So I think that's the thing. I think that there's such a huge power of culture that when you've seen something that you can't unsee, then I think it's really, so like, if you take a person through a story, after that it's very hard to be vegetarian, or to not be vegetarian. And I think it's the same thing. It's like you walk the line, now you've seen the change. So now you can like, do you want to go back? And I think there's certain things, like, for example, air travel is going to come up again. Like, I don't think there's a snowball chance in hell that people are going to say, oh, maybe we should go back to air travel. I think that I'm going to change to my snowball chance in hell background just because of that. Sorry, yes.
No problem. Just like a month ago in January, I was looking for a part-time home in Stockholm because most of our revenue actually from Stockholm. Mm-hmm. And now I'm doing the same things with the same client, but online. And like, exactly. I'm never gonna move to Stockholm half-time. Like, exactly. I will continue going to Stockholm, but not insane as I did last year, for sure.
No, exactly.
I will like reduce it to even 10%. When it's just like a very nice event and a conference, I will go and meet people, but like it's working perfectly. And just between browsers, I was in Stockholm, then come back to Malmo, then I went again to Stockholm from the same room, and actually we done the same results we want to do.
Yeah, that's actually the thing, which I think is going to change. I think that I have so many work companies I've talked to the last like 8, 10, 12 weeks, whatever, during this start, depending on what geography they were in, that they were saying, yeah, now we can travel, but we're switching all of our sales marketing or all of our events online and something. And I think that, I mean, they were all distressed about it, but I think there's almost not a single company that is not positively surprised. That is like, it actually works. And I think it's usually not the startup that is surprised. Usually it's the corporate or the government or whatever, big, and they're like, wow, this really works. Yeah. I think I've gone on so many calls the last weeks where people have been bragging to me that they are like, oh, we have Microsoft Teams or we have Zoom or whatever. And I feel like I have to sit there and fake applaud, like, wow, this is amazing. And I think this is how I always work.
So. And actually, I'm one of the guys who saw you. You are at a conference, but you were talking to the US whenever you are. You travel to the US and you had your laptop between your laps and you were talking like some serious things. I passed by you once before and it's just like, this is actually like, this is how it should be. But you know, when you work with corporates and you're a startup, they want you to come and they want to see you in the room, in the meeting, and then where till you go, and it's 1 hour, you will travel 6 hours. It's crazy, but now it's working and it's really fascinating. I'm really happy with this interview. Do you have any last thing you want to send a message to anyone watching this video to think about or to actually reflect on?
I think that the two things I think that I would try to ask everybody is, one is, I think that, I mean, we're in this together, and then, I mean, that's an easy thing to say, but it means a lot more. And I think in two extents, that's what I mean with two things. One is that don't point fingers at anybody before, and I mean, don't point fingers at anybody, period. I think that if you see somebody behaving like an idiot on Twitter, or you see a government saying something you don't get, or another country is doing something, I don't think it makes any sense to point fingers. I just think it's like extremely, extremely stupid. I realize I have three things to say. The second thing I would say is that then try to clear out your own act. Like, so not pointing fingers also means that, can you think about your own economy? Can you think about your own decision making? Can you try to think about the own criteria that's going to make you do X, Y, or Z? And I think then the third thing is try to figure out how you can be part of this network of people trying to help each other out, trying to build a community. If that is, delivering food to somebody who's in high risk group, or if it's coding for an hospital, or if it's whatever, not going out and actually just staying indoors and not spreading disease. I think that that's the thing, is we have this opportunity to really think about how can I contribute. And I think those are the really three things for me. Is I think that, and what scares me is that we see a lot of people doing exactly the opposite. And because when you get locked in, you're at home and you get really scared, you go online and you complain about stuff. You complain about your government, other countries' governments, other people's, like, people idioting on Twitter.
Such a mess and such a chaos and such a actually confusion for many.
And I really understand it. I really understand it. I mean, what do people do when they're afraid and distressed? I think that it's very hard to look at yourself. And I think trying to get that, and trying to stay sane, and not in multiple ways. I think that's the thing I would do. And I think the best way to stay sane is to stay connected. So play that board game with your cousin, or code for COVID, or do that thing. It's just trying to connect yourself to other people one way or another, and just stay part of the system, and don't check out and become this crazy person that hates everybody else, and just try to stay connected.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed talking to you. I think this is very helpful for me and for so many people. And yeah, just thank you.
Great, no problem. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
You too. Bye.
Bye.